Let me tell you about the worst Friday of my life. Actually, let me tell you about the 13 years before that Friday. The 4 a.m. alarm clocks, the emergency calls from night managers, the diesel contracts I negotiated in my father's office while he taught me which words to use and which to save. Then I'll tell you about the memorial luncheon where my husband looked me in the eye and said, "You're not family, Evilly. Not legally." And then, because this is where it gets good, I'll tell you about the blue envelope my father hid behind his credenza, the one Brian never knew existed, the one that proved everything he'd just said was a lie. I'm Everly Moreno. My husband stole $98.5 million from my late father's company, and I got it back. Here's what you need to know about Bastion Holding Company. It wasn't glamorous. Cold storage warehouses along I-95, a minority stake in a port crane operator, logistics contracts held together by relationships, not software. But it was ours. My father built it handshake by handshake, late payment by grace period, 3 a.m. Phone call by 3 a.m. phone call. For 13 years, I learned the business from the ground up, literally walking the warehouse floors before dawn, checking thermometers, learning which vendors would wait and which wouldn't. That mahogany credenza in his office? Estate sale find, 1987, same year I was born. The crane stake? Negotiated over backyard cookouts and Little League sponsorships. It looked chaotic on paper. It worked perfectly if you understood the people. Brian Hart was charming, that's important. He wasn't a cartoon villain, he was the guy everyone liked. The one who brought structure to Dad's entrepreneurial chaos. Smooth, articulate, always talking about optimizing capital allocation and governance frameworks. When Dad brought him into the business, Brian seemed like the solution, someone who could take what Dad had built and make it professional. And at every company event, he'd tell the story the same way. Matteo is the heart of this operation. I'm just here to make sure the engine runs clean. It sounded like respect. Looking back, it sounded like setup. My father was the kind of man who taught by example. After my mother left, he could have shut down. Instead, he worked harder, loved fiercer, made sure I never felt the hole she left. Everything he did was for me and Bastion, in that order. "You're going to run this one day, mija," he'd say there, usually at midnight after fixing someone else's disaster. "I'm teaching you so nobody can ever tell you that you don't belong here." 4 days before he died, my father couldn't speak anymore, but he grabbed my hand and wouldn't let go, tapping his chest, then pointing at me over and over. I thought he was telling me to be strong. I didn't realize he was trying to warn me. Brian had been so helpful, handling the administrative burden of probate, consolidating accounts just temporarily, bringing in lawyers to protect the estate. I was grieving. I trusted him. He was my husband. Then came Friday. The folder. The sentence that ended my marriage and started a war. The wall safe opens with a metallic sigh. Inside, a red leather ledger, thick as a Bible. And underneath it, an accordion folder stuffed with documents that smell like old ink and newer lies. The ledger is a schematic. Shell companies with names like Torchkite LLC and Brass Lark Ltd, side letters labelled earn-out obligations. Nominee agreements where signatures don't match the supposed signers. And in the centre, drawn in my father's tight engineer's hand, a money flow diagram with arrows and dates and one number circled 3 times, 98.5 pence. 24 months. He'd been bleeding us for 2 years. I hire 3 people in 72 hours. The forensic accountant laughs when he sees the ledger. Not from joy, from recognition. "Your husband has a tell," he says. Every second Tuesday, receivables skim to Luxembourg. Every quarter end, escrow harmonization to Isle of Man. Year-end reversals to zero out taxes. It's a metronome. Precision like this? That's intent. The probate litigator has a memory like carbon paper. She recalls a clerk's name from a motion I filed 3 years ago. Within a day, she's traced bank deposits. The clerk's account spikes $8,000 the week my father's addendum went missing. Email headers show Brian's outside counsel drafted a corrective certificate on the clerk's own workstation. The timestamp doesn't match the courthouse system clock. Someone used a back office stamper. The former federal prosecutor likes clean narratives. He finds the board minutes authorizing the cold storage securitization, dated March 12th, signed by all directors. Phone records show they were on flights, in surgery, unreachable. The lender? Brian's fraternity roommate Marcus. Text thread night before, "We're in." I call our ops manager. He's been told I'm taking time. The junior accountant won't meet my eyes in the hallway. 2 days later, she cracks. We meet in a parking garage, her hands shaking around a coffee cup. "There's a second phone," she whispers. "He calls it comms hygiene, voice memos. He says things like, 'We don't steal, we accelerate.' Will you testify?" "If you can get me immunity." I look at the prosecutor. He nods once. "Done," I say. The judge signs the TROs in chambers, ex parte, no cameras. Targeted accounts freeze within the hour. The junior accountant signs her immunity deal with a pen that skips, then slides the comms hygiene phone across the table in a Ziploc bag, like evidence from a crime scene. Which, legally, it is. The iron key opens a storage unit 20 minutes outside the city. Inside, boxes labelled by year, each one a duplicate ledger. Drive images. File trees showing falsified valuation marks on the port crane stake. High numbers for liquidity events, low numbers for the real hedges. Time-stamped photos of asset tags. Receipts with 2 versions, one for us, one for them. My aunt shows up unannounced at my apartment that night, carrying a banker's box and 30 years of silence. Inside, originals my father gave her for safekeeping, and a memo typed on his old Olivetti titled "Contingencies if Evilly Marries a Salesman." It explains where to hide the addendum. It warns about Brian's genius for tone. It ends, "Salesmen sell, even the truth." "He knew," I whisper. "He hoped he was wrong," she says. Brian's counterplay is predictable. Whisper campaign to the press, lawyers threatening defamation. Evilly is unstable. Grief-stricken. Imagining theft. He books a one-way ticket to a conference in Panama business class leaving in 72 hours. The prosecutor finds the second passport application. Rural county birth certificate Brian shouldn't have. DHS flags a biometric mismatch risk. The ski scar above his left eyebrow, new since his original passport photo. Airport watch triggers automatically. "We move before he does," the prosecutor says. 2-site operation. Servers at HQ, cold storage yard simultaneous. Bank compliance will confirm live once the warrants drop. That night, alone in my car outside Bastion, I shake once. Full body, teeth rattling. Then I pull out my father's letter and read it aloud like a prayer. My phone buzzes. The marshal. Window opens 06:30. I drive home and set my alarm for 5. Dawn breaks cold and blue over the storage yard. Forklifts idle in neat rows. Radios crackle as federal agents move through the gates in pairs, purposeful and quiet. At HQ, the server room is chaos contained. It tries to stall. "We need protocols, we need authorization," until an agent finds a mirror drive duct-taped under a desk. The lead investigator bags it without comment. I'm standing on the catwalk when they bring Brian out. He's tieless, jacket rumpled, the lacquer finally cracked. Workers line the rails above us, faces unreadable. Some angry, some sad, all watching. Camera flashes pop from the fence line. A reporter shouts, "Mrs. Hart, is this about the missing millions?" I turn, calm. It's not about millions, it's about my father and the truth. Brian tries to angle toward the cameras, that old reflex to charm the lens. No one blinks. An agent reads the counts in a flat voice. Wire fraud, bank fraud, conspiracy, aggravated identity fraud, tied to the passport scheme. He looks at me once. I don't look away. 200 miles south, marshals meet a different flight. They lift a suitcase from the overhead bin, unzip a side pocket, find a second passport tucked inside a dress shoe. The passenger, who booked under his legal name, who thought he had 72 hours, is escorted off the plane before it pushes back. Quiet. Professional. Inevitable. Back at the yard, I stand alone for a moment after they've loaded Brian into the transport van. My father's letter is folded in my palm, soft from handling. I look up at the cold room thermometer settling into its range, 38 degrees, right where it should be. Operations will go on. Shifts will run. The work continues. The prosecutor appears beside me, voice low. Now we make it stick. I nod once, and we walk toward the waiting cars. The trial lasts 11 days. The junior accountant plays Brian's voice memos in open court, his voice smooth and certain. We don't steal, we accelerate. Language matters. The clerk pleads to lesser charges and testifies about the lost addendum, about the cash that appeared in her account the same week. Marcus, the fraternity roommate, flips completely. Emails, texts, the whole thread. We're in. The forensic accountant walks the jury through it. Every second Tuesday, receivables skim to Luxembourg. Quarter ends, harmonization to Isle of Man. Year-end reversals, simple, relentless. Impossible to mistake for anything but theft. The notary authenticates the Bastian addendum. My aunt testifies as witness. The court recognizes my authority ab initio. From the beginning, always. The false board minutes disintegrate under call logs and flight records. The jury takes 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Restitution, $98.5 million plus interest. The judge's sentencing memo references extraordinary breach of fiduciary duty and calculated sustained predation. I don't stay to watch him led away. I've already seen that. Aftermath comes in quiet gestures. I rekey every door. Reinstate the shifts Brian cut to make margins look better. Pay small vendors first, with interest for the delay. Invite employees to propose the safety upgrades spreadsheets always killed. The Rosario Fellowship launches in my father's name, scholarships for dock workers' children who want the education he never had. The lobby plaque goes up on a Tuesday. Bastion belongs to those who build it. Pre-dawn, weeks later. I'm on the catwalk with my thermos, watching the cold room thermometer settle into range. 38 degrees. Perfect. I find a last letter tucked into the red ledger that night, my father's handwriting. If you're reading this after, it means you won. Build what I couldn't, Mija. Build something fair. I pocket the iron key, not as a relic, but a reminder. Locks protect or imprison depending on who holds them. I hold them now.